Hey everyone, so I asked you guys if you had any questions for Little Art Talks, and I would make a Q&A video, and here are my answers in response to your questions. How did you come to like art, and what is your relationship with art? I have a father who really likes art. As a kid, we always went to the museum. If you're familiar with San Francisco, the Legion of Honor was his favorite museum, and we went there all the time as a kid. I took art lessons as a kid, but I didn't really like it. Those lessons were mostly, here's a drawing, and here's the technique of drawing, and then you just copy it, basically. And my copies were never that great, and I was always discouraged. Yeah, basically. Then I went to high school, and I didn't get to do all that much that was too creative. I did really get into photography at the time, but nothing too crazy. And then I went to college, and when I got to college, I was an undeclared life science major, I think. I'm not really sure why a life science major. I didn't really know what I wanted to major in, honestly, and it wasn't until I took a introduction art history class. It was actually Introduction to African Art and Architecture, and I really enjoyed that class. I decided, yep, I'm going to make that my major. That was the end of my second year when I declared a major. That same quarter, I took a beginner drawing class, and I really loved the class. The teacher was great, and I decided I wanted to be in the art department and declared as a fine arts major as well. I did have to submit a portfolio and statement of intent and everything, and I finally got accepted, and I was a double major in art history and fine arts. Because I didn't declare my majors until the end of my second year, I basically completed my dual major in 2 years, which was totally doable, but it was also non-stop work, and I kind of preferred it that way. I had a great time with both departments, and I learned a lot during that time. I pretty much started with nothing. I never even took a high school art history class, but I really enjoyed it, so I kept going. And that's it. So when I finished college, I actually took a quarter off because I went to study abroad, and then I came back and I had to finish a quarter to complete my degree. And during that quarter, I had a lot of free time because I only had one class I needed to finish, which was really stupid. So I had a lot of free time, and I started Little Art Talks, and now I'm making videos about art history, so that's my relationship with art right now. Favorite art movement? I don't know. I like so many. I do really like French modern painters, but I also really like conceptual art just because they're so interesting. I do also really like non-Western contemporary art just because it's so interesting. A lot of times when we think about art history, everything is so Western focused, everything about Europe, about Italy and France. But if you look at the art in contemporary Africa or contemporary India, there's so many interesting things going on. It's super interesting because not only are you learning about an entirely new culture and their history, their society and values, but also how it interacts with the West. What is their reaction to Western modern art? And what is the introduction, and do they reject it or accept it or incorporate it? At least for me, that is a really interesting aspect of it. Least favorite art movement, kind of controversial. I'd probably say primitive art. There's a lot of exoticism of different cultures, and they sort of mostly because it was just a bunch of old white men who went to other countries and didn't really learn about their culture and exoticized everyone and sexualized the females and the nudity, and just calling it primitive is very telling of kind of the mindset. They really thought of themselves as going back to the origins and the native state of human beings, but really it's just another culture. It's not, calling them primitive is kind of offensive. Some of these questions will have to be saved for a separate video because I would probably just ramble on for a really long time. I've also been getting some questions about what is Little Art Talks, what is my mission, and why do I make these videos? Is it just a hobby? Is it just whatever? I think it's pretty cool that you guys are asking those questions. I definitely think these questions are very valid and very important. I started Little Art Talks because I didn't really find a lot of art history videos on YouTube, and I basically made videos that I wanted to watch when I was starting out and learning art history because, as I said before, I started with ground zero. I didn't know anything. And there's sort of that barrier that can be really difficult for people to overcome, especially when you get to modern and contemporary art. There's so much history and conversation with the past that it's hard to talk about contemporary or modern art without talking about historical stuff. It's kind of like how you have to reference an earlier period to talk about a current period, and that can be really frustrating for people. And for a lot of people, it's important to say that art should be understood alone, like in isolation, but a lot of times it's not. Obviously, since I have an art history background, I feel really strongly that art does not exist in isolation. And I wanted to make videos that can explain it in a way that was easy to approach and comprehend, even if you don't have a ton of background behind it. And as you guys know, I do a lot of modern and contemporary art because I didn't think there was a lot of resources out there. And I do a lot of non-Western art because, again, I don't think there's a lot of resources out there, and whereas Western art is really popular and there's a lot of great content out there basically, and I don't want to be competing with something so great. My series of 5 artists in 5 minutes has been particularly interesting because the idea is that it's just a format. You have 5 artists or 5 artworks, I'm kind of loose with the term, and you present them in 5 minutes and they have some sort of theme tied together. And I've been getting a lot of comments that are like, I'm surprised you didn't talk about this artist. And it's true, 5 in 5 is not a top 5 list. It's hardly comprehensible, comprehensible, that's a bad, comprehensive, I mean. 5 in 5s are not designed to be the end-all and be-all of that specific theme. I try to say this on all the 5 in 5s. This is not a complete list. There's a ton of other artists out there who are equally important and notable that are not included in that list. I get some questions about how I pick the 5 artists, and most of the time they're artists that I'm interested in because I came up with the topic, so there's something about it that is interesting to me, and there's a lot of research that goes on behind it so that I pick the 5 that I think have an interesting conversation with each other within that theme, has a couple different demonstrations of how that theme manifests in art, and the different responses to it. So yes, it's not all the artists, and you should definitely point out artists you think are relevant. I'm definitely going through them and I love hearing your suggestions. So that is my whole spiel about 5 in 5. So I hope that answers some of your questions. As I said, there's some with really long answers that are going to be just another video because this video will be way too long with them. So if you have any more questions you would like for me to answer, leave them in the comment section below or tweet me or any of them. I'll collect them all and make another Q&A for you guys. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.